Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, another impactful story, another impactful journey, another story that's making a difference in somebody's life. Definitely a beast mindset today. Let me tell you where we're going today. We're going to travel down several avenues today. We're going to talk about the new podcast, The Fulfillment in Faith. I believe I got it right. Fulfillment in Faith, FAITH podcast. We're also going to talk about the cutting edge of transformation. And I know what people might say, like, what are you talking about? Just imagine taking your life into your own hands. We always tell people every day, you need to be accountable. We need to make others accountable. We hear that all the time. How about making yourself accountable? How about taking your own actions, good, bad, or indifference, really analyzing it and changing the narrative? Changing the narrative. That's kind of hard for most of us to do in today's society, because we're always looking to point the blame somewhere, whether it be, my parents, my relationship, my co-workers. We come up with more excuses instead of looking at it like this. Everything that you encounter is part of the transformation of your life. So you have to sit back and go, why am I here? Let me use her phrase before we introduce her. Why in the hell am I here? How did I get here? And what's the purpose behind all this? Well, we have award-winning international publicists. A book named exactly that. How in the hell did I get here? Damn, you know how many times I hear people say that and never thought it would be a book, but it is a book. And we have on the show a lady who took all of these words and took her life and put it into a book, put it into a program, put it into a podcast, and still ask the same question: how in the hell did I get here? Welcome to the show, Miss Shannan Kym. What's up, baby girl?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. As you're talking, I'm getting more and more excited. I'm getting more elevated. I'm like bursting out of the bag here. So now I'm wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Before we get started, I like this title. How in the hell did I get here? Because when you just carry on a conversation with people nowadays, especially even on my podcast, I hear people say, how in the hell did I get here? I never thought that it would be a book with that same title. But before we get into the book, before we get into the podcast, and you're from Canada, so let's tell the viewers a little bit about you and your birth in Canada. Tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Shannan Kym. I can honestly say for the first time in my life, I am 55 years old, and I have never, ever been so dang happy, so joyful. Life is beyond amazing. I have got 4 absolutely beautiful children. I'm living the life of my dreams because I actually did say to myself 5 years ago in August of 2019, how in the hell did I get here? Because it was not good, which you will find out here shortly. Yeah. Yeah.
When you say, how in the hell did I get here? Let's start from a little bit about the childhood. What was the childhood like? Because everything starts from the womb, and then it just pretends to just get out of control. So it started there. Let's start from when you was a kid. Where did all this stuff started at?
So I am the youngest of 8 children. I have 8. I got 7 other brothers and sisters, but I also have a half brother as well too. And I was brought up in a very, very small farming community. And within that community, addiction and all of that was very much normalized. And it was definitely normalized within my family. So my father was a full-fledged raging alcoholic, extremely abusive, which with the alcoholism brought in mental illness as well too. So that was what I was brought up in that environment. And then when I was approximately 2.5, 3 years old, my father committed suicide. And that was after the fact that he had totally abused my entire family members. I don't remember any of that. But what had taken place was my oldest brother carried on the exact same thing that my father had normalized within the family. So I was actually abused by my oldest brother. And so that was all normalized to me. So I brought up in a household where I was extremely fearful. It was drilled into me for years, and I mean years, that I was dumb, I was stupid, I was never going to amount to anything, I was no good. And I truly believed that all of those years. So there was a lot of things, you are who you attract, right? I believed those things about me.
Mm.
I didn't realize that though on a conscious level.
Hmm.
So that was when I started to become a people pleaser, a chameleon, and all of that. And then eventually I did become an alcoholic myself. I don't label myself as that anymore, but I was someone that was highly addicted to alcohol. Yeah. And so many other things within my life as well.
You mentioned normalize
Mhm.
events
Yeah.
that was taken up by people in the family. And because you're in Canada, I mean, we don't hear things about Canadians about, drug addiction and that kind of behavior. But, it's you lived in a farm community. What kind of drugs are available? What kind of things are available in Canada in a farm community that cause addiction?
Well, you're looking back at, like, I was born in 1969.
And
So
when?
even in 1969 was when I was born, right? So growing up back then, what would have been the normal drug back then? Alcohol, of course,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But then as I got older, then that was when, more exposed to like pot and stuff like that. I never did any of the drug aspect of things.
Mm.
But, we're no different than, the US or anything now up here. Like, drugs are everywhere. Addiction is absolutely everywhere. It's alcoholism, drinking has become so normalized within our society. And it's really sad how things have shifted where if you don't drink, you're the outcast.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be something wrong. Like
Mm.
you don't drink. And that really, really, it's so horrible. It's absolutely horrible, that our society, the way of thinking has shifted to that type of mentality. No wonder Canada and the US are falling apart.
Where was your mom at during these activities that your father was enforcing or impacting on you and your family, your siblings?
This is the real sad part because my mother and my oldest brother took the brunt of his abuse. So that became normal to her. She had no self-esteem. Still to this day, there's no self-esteem, there's no self-worth. There is nothing. And I feel really, really sorry for my mother because she never seen that within herself. And then so when it came time for the rest of us as I grew up, my mom did nothing because that was normal. She's seen it every single day. And so she never protected us. And yeah, it's so sad. So I ended up having a lot of resentment towards her. And now to this day, I don't talk to any of my family members at all. In order to protect myself, in order to protect my children and the generations of my lineage, my family, I had to totally and completely take all toxicity out of my life. And sadly, that included all of my family. but it was the best thing I could have ever done. But sadly, no, my mom, she just watched it all. She never protected us. No.
So you mentioned your brothers um, carried on their tradition. So I will assume by you separating yourself, cutting the cord from your family, your siblings, that this is still being perpetuated on
Yeah.
through your family
Yes, it is.
that they think is
Yes.
normal.
Yeah, it is. It continued to the generations, which is extremely sad. But I got the chance to actually step away. I moved away from my family. And so they're still in the box, right? That whole community, all of it, right? Where I got the chance to, I actually moved away to the next province over. But it took me to actually hit rock bottom. I was to the point where I was actually ready to commit suicide. I couldn't even get out of bed. I was drinking 6 bottles of wine a day. I was on the brink of death. And then finally, I ended up going to a treatment center, and that was where I started to get my help. And then, I quit drinking for a year. I started to set boundaries, all of that. Like I had to go through the process of all of that, where my family members, they're not even close to being there. They're still in denial, which is really sad, but we're all on our own journey. I know that and I understand that because of the work that I've done, and I knew what was best for me.
Mhm.
I'm not fearful of my past at all. I'm not ashamed of my past. My past was the biggest learning tool that I could ever have gone through. And I am very thankful for that. Where my family is still in it, they don't see it. They're still full of shame.
When did the light pop up on you? You mentioned something about the law of attraction. If
Mhm.
somebody says a lot of times, people say, I would rather take a beating than to be verbally scorned. And I don't know if you, did you have to, when you had to choose between the two, let's talk about more of the attraction, the law of attraction. Were you finding yourself basically in the same situation as your mom is in, where you was feeling the self-worth and worthlessness and so forth? When did you come out of it? Were you attracting men that were doing the same identical thing to
Yeah,
you and your children?
yeah.
Really?
Um, I can go so deep into this, especially when it comes to vibration. You are who you attract, but inside of me, my vibration was so low. You got to understand that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world.
Mhm.
And so we're all born into a vibration. We're on a vibration right now. You're on a vibration, I'm on a vibration, and I can honestly say that you and I are on a very good vibration. Our vibrations are very similar because we're attracting each other. We're together, right? But the vibration that I was born in a vibration, the lowest vibration possible. That's where fear, anxiety, depression, addiction, all of that lives. So that vibration is what I held within me for years. That's why all of that was so normalized for me. Then, as I got into my 20s and 30s, right, I was attracting people into my life that were narcissists, that were emotionally abusing me, not physically. I can honestly say I was never physically abused, except from my brother. But and then, that was how my life played out. Then, of course, I was still stuck in that vibration where all that shame and everything was. I kept on is trying to suppress. So then I brought in the alcohol, right?
Mhm.
Then things got even darker for me until I hit rock bottom. And then I woke up in August of 2019, and that was when I had my pivotal moment of, holy, how in the hell did I get here? How did I possibly get here? That was a light bulb moment. That was my spiritual awakening, and that was the beginning of me being guided by the divine.
You mentioned something that was really powerful. A lot of people don't have those moments, and it's kind of sad that you have to come from a lower vibrational situation, and some people stay in that fear factor. When you got the awakening, what was what did you put in order? How did you start putting your life in order once you realized this isn't what I want anymore?
See, that's the biggest question that so many people do not ask of themselves. And that is huge. There are like so many people out there on a daily basis that do not know what they want. And that was what brought me to my healing, because when I woke up that morning, I felt different. There was just something within me. But I had been living all of those years, and I was 50 at that time. And I had been living all of those years of what I did not want. And I was done with it. And I could see that I was spiraling downward again. And I was like, that's what saved me. I was like, I can't go back to the way things were. So it was like, what is it that I want? I didn't have a life plan of what I wanted. I was going with what I wanted in that now, in the now moment. The now moment was I didn't want to drink anymore. Number one. Number two was I wanted to be a good mother. That was big. Those were my whys. The next thing is I want to be a mentor for my children, and I wanted to be healthy. And those were the things that I started with. My whys were so strong at that point in time. And then from there, I had my four whys, my four wants. Then from there, I went into, I could actually open up my mind. And then I expanded a little further. And that was when it was like, how in the hell did I get here? What brought me to this moment? And then it was like a light bulb moment. And I was like, why am I the way that I am? And then I could actually see, oh my gosh, I turned into my mother. I did not protect my children. I physically was turning into my brother. I had become someone that was addicted to alcohol. I wasn't physically abusing my children or my husband. I was mentally abusing them. You know, I was living the life exactly the way that I had lived. My mother and my brother were living their life. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So then from there, I started to slowly change by my wants and my whys, right? I started to get healthy. I quit drinking. I started to set boundaries. You know, my life totally started to transform
When you
slowly but surely.
when you say, this is a two-part question, when you say set boundaries, what were the boundaries that you were allowing individuals to violate? And then the second part of the question is, you saw yourself turning into your mom, you saw yourself turning into your brother, you saw situations. Were you carrying out these same actions that was placed upon you with your family? And when you went for treatment, where were your children?
Um, I I turned into my mother. Absolutely, I did. I turned into my brother. There's no question, right? Um, and yes, I was neglecting my children in the sense that my alcohol became so much more important than anything else in the world. You know, I would get up in the morning at about 6:30 in the morning. And because I did not want to face the truth of how I was brought up and the feelings and everything that were going on within me and how I devalued myself, I hated myself. I would look at myself in the mirror and I'd be like, oh my gosh. You know, I would look at my past with the embarrassment. My last name that I grew up with, there was so much, excuse me, there was so much shame and fear and everything that was attached to me. I did not like who I was at all. I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. And so the suppression, and that was where when the alcohol came in, like I said, I would get up in the mornings and I would start neglecting my children from the moment I got up, because the first thing I would do was I would go and I would get that bottle of wine. You know, I was playing the role of the mother, but I was drunk. You know, I neglected them in so many different ways. I was not there to protect them. I was a danger to them, if anything. You know, I was driving impaired, you know, I was living a total, complete lie is what I was doing. I was not, yeah, I was going through the roles of feeding them and stuff like that, but I was not there for them emotionally at all. I was in my state of feeling sorry for myself and blaming absolutely everybody else. And then finally, when I did go to treatment, you know, I was married at the time, so my husband was looking after the children, while I was at treatment, because I went to the top treatment center in Canada, and I was there for just shy of 9 weeks. And that was just the beginning of my journey, for sure. Like, it opened up the doors of my healing. But a lot of people need to understand, when you go to the treatment center, it's all your work. The treatment center is not going to save you. It
Right.
was literally just the beginning. And a lot of people are so embarrassed about going to a treatment center. That is the furthest thing that you should be. You should be damn proud that you are going to a treatment center, because that is the beginning of you healing yourself. And that is so, so important.
What did your husband and your kids say when you decided to take the matters into your own hand, or was this a collaboration between you and your husband because he saw how you was treating him and how you was treating the kids?
I'm going to be honest with you in regards to my husband, and that's one thing about me. Once you get to know me, is I'm an open book on everything. My husband played a huge role in my addiction, but the thing is you are who you attract. When my husband came into my life 28 years ago, I was somebody that did not love myself. I didn't like myself. I
Hmm.
didn't value myself. So I attracted him into my life. And that's exactly how he treated me. He didn't love me. He didn't value me. He didn't respect me. So that was all a part of it, right? So as the years went by, I wanted to be loved. He wasn't capable of loving me the way that I thought that I needed to be loved, right? So he was very much a part of that addiction, because within our marriage and our relationship, it was always him, the business, his family, the children, then me. And that was all a part of my addiction, because as the years went by, I was like, okay, I'm going to be next. I'm going to be next, right? I put everybody else first. That's where my people pleasing and my chameleon stages came in, right?
Right.
But then finally, when it wasn't happening, that was when I really, really dove deep into those wine bottles. Yeah. Yeah.
When you
But
talk,
you know what? I take full responsibility for that too. And that's the thing. You have to be accountable for your actions from the past. That's
right.
all a part of the healing. That's very much where I am now. Do I blame him for any of that? Absolutely not. Because I see the big picture. I
Hmm.
see the big picture about that. You know, I get it.
How it had to be difficult for you to sever the ties with your family. Eventually, you're going to have to, during this transformational phase, you come out with a sense of enlightenment, or we might call it Christ mindedness,
Mhm. Mhm.
a spiritual universal journey. How do you tell your kids what you went through and how all that you went through landed you to put yourself into the um I can't think of what they're called, the place you was at, the rehab like place. How do you tell your family when you're done with all this that I'm gonna not speak to your grandmother, I'm not gonna speak to your uncles anymore, and this is the reason why, and when you and I'm your dad, blah blah blah, this is what I attracted, I don't want this anymore, but I love you guys because you're my kids, but I want to protect you the way that I should. So how do you explain to them what protection is, and how do you bring your life into theirs and still let them know you're not blaming anybody from what happened, you're taking accountability with in yourself, but at the same time I want to protect you so you don't have the same mishaps that I had.
Mhm. Mhm. This has been quite the journey for me, and my older kids have seen me go through the whole process of everything.
Mm.
And so especially my oldest daughter, she's seen me, when I was at the roughest times of my years and all of that, right, through the treatment center. And it definitely has affected her. There's no question.
Mm.
And then my second oldest daughter, she's seen a little bit of it, because when I was through that full process of the treatment center, she was about 12 years old. And then the younger ones, they don't really remember. They see the enlightened mummy, you know.
Okay.
Um, But I speak openly and honestly about absolutely everything. I don't blame others for what had taken place. They were all a part of the journey with me because of, you are who you attract. But because I speak so openly about my addiction, my family, my upbringing, my abuse, everything, they're very open and forthcoming as well too. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just talk about it openly. Like even, how I was to where I am now, I'm not embarrassed about it. I talk about when I was in therapy, when I'd been in the treatment center,
Mhm.
all of it. But they've also seen all the good that I've done from that. They know that I'm protecting them. You know what I mean? From where I was to where I am now. They know it's about them and about protecting myself. Because they also know too that, and I let them know that if I don't have my sobriety, I don't have anything. Like that is my number one. I don't want them to create that life like I had,
Mhm.
so, but I was normalizing it for them. So they could easily be in the same state that my family members are in, but I stopped that because of the love that I've got for them. I will do anything for them. And that's, if that means keeping family away, it
Mhm.
does because of the toxicity, because they've kept those situations normalized still to this day.
People might say that was easy said than done. This wasn't an overnight
No,
retreat for
no.
you. This took some work. What was the hardest part that you had to deal? What were some of the hardest things that you had to deal with while you were in the treatment center? And then what was the hardest thing that you had to deal with coming out of the treatment center? Because now you got to tell somebody, I'm done.
Yeah. When it came time for me to go to the treatment center, I'll be honest with you. At that particular time, when I went to the treatment center, I thought I was going to the treatment center 100% for me. But
Mhm.
it wasn't until later on that I came to the realization, because you're growing all the time, right? I came to the realization that I had went to the treatment center probably, I'm going to say 75% for me, but there was that 25% I was doing for everybody else. Because I was kind of looking at it, because I had been a people pleaser my whole entire life, right? So that's where that 25% came in. If people see me go into a treatment center, then they would think, I'm really trying and stuff like that, right?
Right.
But it ended up, and when you go to some
Is
place
that is
like
that
that,
called the
you really want
chameleon?
to do the work. Pardon me?
Is that called the chameleon that you was doing?
Yep, yep, for sure, for
Okay.
sure. But me going into the treatment center, like I said, I learned so much about addiction. I learned so much about myself. It was the beginning of me starting to open up and to really face and see things for the first time and to really realize, like, that was me realizing that how I was brought up was not normal. It was screwed up, right? And so I went through the process of the mourning and anger and all of that. Then it came to the realization of all these different relationships and my marriage and stuff like that and popped up, like looking at that and being like, oh my gosh, like this is all just a part of it. No wonder I was so screwed up. No wonder, I became someone that was so addicted to alcohol. No wonder I became like my mother and like my brother. No wonder I have the life that I have. No wonder I'm so unhappy. And then when I came out of the treatment center, and that was when I really started to set my boundaries, and I created my own little bubble.
Mhm.
I would say no to people. I stopped hanging out with people that were drinking, and basically I lost 90% of the people in my life, but I was okay with that because I was making my choices for the very first time. I was not being a people pleaser or a chameleon. And when you have people in your life all of those years that are used to you playing that role, they don't like it when you start to set boundaries and say no to them, and I don't want you drinking around me and different things. They don't like that, right? They
Mhm.
wanted the old Shannan back. And I wasn't going back to that old Shannan. But what the problem was is with the treatment center is I did not know about triggers. They didn't teach me about triggers or anxiety or any of that. So I was put into a situation where I no longer had control of my environment because we flew to a wedding in New York
Mhm.
and I was with my husband's side of the family. And I didn't know that I was still dealing with abandonment issues and all this other stuff, right?
Right.
So when I was put in that environment, that shame, lack of self-worth, I'm not good enough to be in this family, all of that started triggering me. I ended up drinking again. And I
What?
drank for about another year. Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then I drank for about a year and a half. And then that was when I woke up in August of 2019 and I'm like, no, I'm done because I could see myself spiraling back to the state of where I had initially went into the treatment center,
But your
right? And
husband
that was when I
knew,
was like, I'm not going there.
but your husband knew you went into the treatment center. So why would he put you in a compromised situation?
Well, that's one of the reasons why why I'm getting divorced. Because I had grown so much through the whole process of this, right? And my
Yeah.
husband was never there to support me. There was many things that had taken place and I had grown and he didn't want to grow with me. He liked his life. And you know what? That's okay. People are in your life for a season and a reason. Some
You
are in there for a lifetime.
you managed to recognize. That's the first thing.
Absolutely, because my why and who I am and where I'm going is so strong. If I had to release him as well, then I was willing to do that, and I have.
Did your kids see when you had the relapse? Did
Mhm.
your oldest kids, not your youngest kids, but did your older kids go, "Mom, what's going on?" Were they a
They,
major impact in you going back to recognize, look, I've fallen off. I got to go back and get
there
my
was a
life
lot of,
together.
there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of everything. And that is what brought me to my pivotal moment of
Mhm.
saying, how in the hell did I get here? Because I didn't want to go back to that. I could see the hurt in my kids. I could see the hurt. And it was like, no, I'm done. I am not doing this again. I
So,
am not.
so you recognize that you had a relapse, and like I was telling people, this wasn't an easy journey, and I don't think
No.
any type of recovery, or let's rephrase it. Let's not even call it recovery. Let's call it self-awareness treatment.
Yeah.
Let's call it self-awareness treatment. I don't
Yeah.
like the word recovery. Let's call it self-awareness treatment plan. So when you did the self-awareness treatment plan and you got your life together, you come out. How long was it? Did your father commit suicide after you completed your mission, or did he do it before?
No, my father committed suicide when I was 2.5.
Years old?
When I was 2.5 years old, yes. And then my brother took over my father's role. And
Now it's making sense. Okay, now it makes
yeah,
sense.
with the addiction and the abuse and all of that. So he was basically my father figure role,
I got
right?
it. Now it makes
He
sense.
was there all throughout my upbringing because him and my mom were like this. They were two peas in a pod, right?
Hmm.
And they had a connection with each other, and still to this day they've got that connection. That's why it's so toxic. Like yeah, it's I totally had to remove myself from the family environment to this day. Yeah.
So you've taken all this information, all this trial and and the bottom of the well, and you're coming out beautifully. Let's call it what it is. You came out beautifully. Now you decided to write the book. How did the book come into play?
Oh, I when I started going on my journey there and I was starting to realize exactly what my past basically was, I started to be truthful,
Mhm.
about everything because to get healthy to where I was, I needed to start speaking my truth. And then I thought, if there's just one person that is going through what I went through, then I want to help them.
Right.
So I started to write this book. And I'll be honest with you, I never even really thought about me in this book at all. My only focus was if I can just write something that can help that one person.
Right.
And then, so it took me less than 3 months to write my book. And after I was all done and I read it from start to finish, I realized like, oh my gosh, for all of did I really go through all of this? Like I lost a baby, like there's just so many different things in it, right? My dad commits suicide. I brought up in, this household of addiction and abuse and all these people, that I let walk all over me and like all these different situations. I married into this, this type of family and, I let them walk all over, just everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like, I can't believe that I've survived all of this. And I'm like, no wonder I was so screwed up. Do you know what I mean? And then I was, all I want to do is help somebody. This book touches on so many different areas of people's lives. It's not just about addiction. That's just the small part of that book.
What are
And
what are the what are the three things in the book that's most is the most powerful part of the book as far as you're concerned? And then the second part of that is how much of your book do is being resonated by individuals because you have your podcast. So how many of those people that have read your book come on your podcast and says I can relate to that? So that's the two question answer.
okay, so I would have to say what is most relatable in that book is the fact that, which is shocking, I am so open on every level about my truths. I,
Mhm.
I don't, I don't hide anything, right? So that's really hard for people to understand is I'm an open book. I was so truthful. Speak your truth. That's what I can say is speak your truth. The biggest thing about that too is a lot of people don't realize how normalized addiction and abuse really is in everyday lives. That what I would have to say is the second one. And the third one is me coming into the realization about all of this and then speaking openly about it. Like there's family situations in there which people can relate to, how I lived my daily life being a chameleon, doing everything for others, talking about my fear. I did it all out of fear. So many people live on fear on a daily basis and they don't even realize it.
You
There's
have
so
a
much that you can take
you
out
have
of
a
the book.
podcast. So how many people have been on your podcast that have read your book and said I can relate to what you've gone through?
Well, that was the funny thing about my podcast was because I actually originally used my podcast as a marketing tool to get my book out there even more. So when I first originally did my podcast, it was just basically me reading my chapters of my book.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until later on that I started bringing guests on because people were starting to, know about my book or, through social media and stuff like that. So the first part of my podcast, the first 15 episodes was me reading a chapter, and then I would talk about what my feelings were back then. But then because I had grown into the person that I was, during that time of the podcast, my thoughts and feelings and emotions had shifted. So I could give a perspective of then, and then I could give a perspective of now, right? Which was two totally different things, right? Because I was two totally different people, right? Back then and then now at that point in time of the podcast. And then, I was like, there are so many things that I can do with this podcast. Like I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that has been addicted to alcohol. I'm not the only one that has been physically, emotionally, abused. I'm not the only one that is living in a marriage like this. I'm not the only one. There's not the, and then I started, meeting so many different people, that were like Shannan, like we relate to what you're saying. And then it was like, would you want to become a podcast on my book? Would you like to become a guest on my podcast? And then it just kind of went from there. And then people were starting to really open up and to share their stories, anywheres from addiction to abuse to, you know, their marriages, sex trafficking. Like there's just so many things that people, because they wanted to help others that were going through the exact same thing that they did. And by them sharing their story, they knew that they were helping others out there.
Man, how's your relationship now with your kids? You're getting ready to go through a divorce. I'm sorry to hear that, but like you said, sometimes you have to
Yeah.
separate in order to grow.
Yeah. Oh, there's absolutely no question about that. And I can honestly say, like with the divorce with me and my husband, we are very amicable. You know what I mean? Like I am not angry or any of that, you know, like he is who he is. He's on his own different journey. I get that and I understand that. And that was the one thing that I want to make clear with everybody is because I have done so much work on myself and I am so accepting of who I was then, the journey that I went through and who I am now. I love myself. I truly love myself. And I look at my husband, and you know what? There are some steps that he just can't take. He may never be able to take, but you know what? That's okay. He's on his own journey. He brought out in me, which I really needed to work on. And that was one thing I said to him. He actually gave me that gift.
Mm,
He brought out every insecurity, everything that I did not like in myself, and he made me aware of it
mm.
for me to work on it and for me to become the person that I am today. So he actually did give me that gift, and I thanked him for it.
Does he
And he looked
recognize?
at me
Does he recognize what he? Does he recognize the transformation in you?
very much so. Absolutely, he
But
does.
the funny part about this. The funny part about this is funny. He may recognize the change in you. You would think. I know you can really smile on this one. You would think that
Oh,
he
yeah.
that he would see that he might needs to change himself.
He knows that he does, but the sacrifice for him would be too great because there are so many things with him that he doesn't want to see. He's in denial. And we've talked about these different
It's
situations.
hard for people to see their own demons in the mirror.
It is very much so. And he can't do it. He doesn't have the strength. He's not ready to at this point in time. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I don't know. I don't know. But he does know too that when the time comes, if he is willing and ready to go forward and grow to be the greatest version of himself,
Mm-hmm.
that I am definitely there to help him along his journey.
Yeah, you got the teacher right there.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And that's the thing, like we've got four beautiful children together, and I definitely want, you know, I would never jeopardize the love that they've got for him and vice versa, you know, because like I said, I like the love that I've got for myself, the love is going outward, you know, and the love is still going towards him, even though we're not together.
Yeah,
And that's fine. But what a beautiful gift that we can show our children. You can divorce and still be amicable.
and you
There
can.
doesn't have to
Yeah,
be that friction there at all.
yeah,
But that's because I've worked on myself. I'm not blaming him for anything. I take total responsibility. I
and
get it.
and the fact that you can still love with forgiveness in your heart
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm the type of person now that I look at my whole entire life.
Right.
Like I said, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Unfortunately, I haven't met anybody yet that's been in my life for a lifetime. You know, and you know, anything within my life, you know, things will come and go. But I'm very much in the present moment of if your life is not helping me grow and flow, um, or making me glow, then it doesn't stay in my life because that's just who I am, right? Because I know that there are endless possibilities of where I'm going and what I'm doing, and I create that world for me. And I'm very much at that, you know, what is going to take me to the highest level that I need to get next, you know? And that's the one thing that I'm teaching my children as well too. Because from where I was to where I am now, whoa, not even a different, not totally different person. You know,
Yeah,
anybody from my past, you know, my old friends and stuff like that, like they don't know who I am now. They can't possibly know who I am now because that version of myself is so old, she's gone,
yeah.
right? And so many people are still attached to that old person, you know. They still want that old Shannan to come back. Well, she's not there. But that's because that's the person that they can relate to. They can't relate to the new person, me.
Shannan, thank you so much for taking time to tell a
Thank
beautiful
you.
story. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. For
Oh,
for
Okay.
sharing such a great story
I know, hey?
of Christ-minded enlightenment is what I would call this. How
Mhm.
can the viewers reach out to you? How can they listen to your podcast? How can you help them to understand the steps for
Absolutely.
transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go onto my website, shannankym.com. Um, and my name has got no O's in it. So it's SHANNANKYM.com. My social media, you can reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and also Facebook. And to go on my podcast, it's on all platforms. It's Fulfillment in Faith. It's on Spotify, Apple, you name it, it's there. But there are so many different ways that you can connect with me. You go on my website, you click the link to do a one-on-one call with me. I would absolutely love to chat with you and to see where I can help you out because I do have programs available for, each level of elevation or ascension or whatever, wherever you're at, I can be there to help you. Yeah, to guide you. And I would love that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shannon, once again for taking time to come on the show. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow. Like I tell people, all you need to do is click on somebody, and all it takes is one click to make a difference, to meet a friend. Everything that you do, play it forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.